Welcome back to the GTHL Breakout podcast. Today we're kickstarting Mental Health Week and Asian Heritage Month with a very special guest, the Canadian Mental Health Association Ontario Division Director of Communications, Joe Kim. Joe is an alumnus of the once MTHL and is currently a coach with Ted Reeve. Thanks so much for joining us today, Joe.
Oh, my pleasure, Stephanie.
So as we quickly noted there, you did play in the MTHL. Let's go back. Let's talk about your playing days. What do you remember most?
Oh, what I remember most about the old MTHL, which is the precursor to the G for a lot of people who don't know, just a lot of the fun teams I played with. I played AAA earlier and then AA through my younger and teen years. And it was just a lot of fun. Going to the rink was always fun. I don't necessarily remember stat lines, goals, assists. I do remember, any tournament wins or big achievements as a team. And some of those guys are still, I still play hockey with today. So it's a lot of fun memories about playing in the MTHL. And now that I'm coaching in it, there's a lot of fun memories I'm creating coaching as well.
Well, and we do want to touch on coaching, but you're also a hockey parent. So I think that's a really important perspective because you went from the stands to the bench. And I'm just curious, what prompted you to make the move to jump behind the bench?
I think there are a lot of reasons. My son's been playing in the G ever since he started playing hockey, which has been great. And the G is the Ted Reeve Association is so supportive of all the coaches and all the families and the players. I just felt like I had a bit of hockey knowledge. I don't have a great amount of knowledge, but I have some knowledge that I felt like I could pass along to the kids. And it's been a great experience. I'm glad I've had the opportunity. Working with young kids has been amazing. That was my first experience. This has been my first experience working with young kids in a coaching environment. And it's been a lot of fun because I've seen them grow up from, young kids to now they're teenagers, 15 years old. And I've seen a lot of changes in them, and it's been a lot of fun.
Do you think being a hockey parent as well as a coach and having those two perspectives really help you understand both sides there?
I really do. I think sometimes as a coach, I can get so wrapped up into wins and losses and performance on the ice. And then I love when I have hockey parents on our team who might not be as experienced with hockey, and their focus is all about, did their child play well? Did they work hard? Did they have, some sort of achievement that doesn't show up on the scoreboard? And to me, that takes me back and reminds me that, hey, it's a sport that kids love. I'm a parent. I should be supporting their achievements, the way they play. And yes, as a coach, winning and losing is hard, but in the end, I coach AA. It's highly unlikely that any of my kids are going to make NHL. So I want to raise them to be good young people and to have that parent perspective of, hey, you know what? It's about athlete development. It's about personal development for these kids. To me, that's a good reminder that I sometimes forget when I'm on the bench.
Well, from a personal development standpoint, as you mentioned, mental health has been such a strong point of conversation over the last few years, especially in the hockey space and in sports in general. Professionally, as we talked about, you're Director of Communications for the Canadian Mental Health Association Ontario Division. And it is Mental Health Week this week. It's CMHA's Mental Health Week. Do you want to share with us the significance of this week and maybe the messaging behind it?
Absolutely. Many people might know that the first full week of May is Mental Health Week. They might hear about it on the media or read about it. But what a lot of people don't know is that Mental Health Week was actually started by the Canadian Mental Health Association. And we're a federal organization with a presence in more than 330 communities across the country and in provinces and territories. So CMHA is the oldest national mental health charity, and Mental Health Week has been around for a long time. And it's just a good time, more so in recent years, a good time to talk about the subject of mental wellness and addictions and how people are doing, how you're feeling. And, this year, the focus is on empathy. And, given all that we've gone through with the pandemic and over the last few years, I think we could all use a bit more empathy, meaning that we could all, be less quick to judge, or more open to just hearing how others are feeling or hearing about other people's experiences, and not necessarily trying to find a solution if they're struggling, but just being with them, just listening to their challenges and showing them that there's people who want to listen to how they're doing, and just be that voice, just be that ear for them, or that shoulder to lean on. So, this week being Mental Health Week, I hope we all practice a little bit of empathy.
It's such an important message, and that message, along with so many others. You actually work specifically in the hockey world as well, professionally, through the CMHA's Talk Today program, and that you work with the Canadian Hockey League and the Canadian Junior Hockey League. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the Talk Today program and the goals?
Absolutely. And being working in the mental health field is fantastic. I love public service. I love giving back. But when we had an opportunity to work mental health and hockey, it was like a dream come true. Two passions of mine coming together. So Talk Today was started in 2014, and it does have some tragic beginnings. There was a death by suicide in the Ontario Hockey League, and shortly thereafter, we reached out to the OHL and later on to the Canadian Hockey League, and worked with them to develop a suicide prevention suicide prevention program for all the junior-aged hockey players across the Canadian Hockey League. And what started in Ontario, with the support of David Branch, who was commissioner of the CHL at the time, he's now commissioner of the OHL. We started this Talk Today program, and what it does is it pairs up our branches. We have almost 30 branches in Ontario, and like I said earlier, we have a presence in 330 communities nationwide. What it does, it pairs up our branch experts with junior hockey teams across the country, so that we're able to provide junior hockey players, coaches, staff, billets, suicide prevention training. And the training is taken by the teams at the beginning of the season so that they can support each other as the season goes on, because we all know, kids who are playing junior hockey are really under the microscope, and they're really, they're close to their dream. And there can be a lot of pressures there, and sometimes they need help with the pressure, and sometimes the pressure can get to them. And if they have a connection to the CMHA, and they have a connection to resources that we can provide and some training we can provide, we're happy to be there for them. To date, we've trained more than 6,000 people with suicide prevention across the Canadian Hockey League, and now I'm pleased to say we're across the Canadian Junior Hockey League as well. So just working with hockey people across the country is great. They see the importance of mental health, and when they see the importance in something, they do it, and they're true to their word. And mental health can be a scary subject in hockey circles and hockey dressing rooms, but the leadership at the CJHL and the CHL have been wonderful.
Do you take your experience in the mental health field and with the Talk Today program, and do you bring it into your own dressing room? Do you find how significant it is?
For sure. Especially now as the kids are getting older, I coach 15-year-olds, and they're going through a lot of changes in their life. They're growing up, going through puberty, seeing changes in their lifestyle and with their physicality. Working in the mental health field, I'm always mindful of, are there any changes I'm seeing in the kids and their behavior? Are they skipping a lot of practices? Are they not showing up? Are they not as engaged? And those are all little signs to, just check in with them. And so, I like to have conversations as a group about mental health, at least just raise the issue in the dressing room, talk about mental health, just like we talk about gender diversity, or we'll talk about other sensitive or less sensitive subjects these days. But I think it's always important to create an atmosphere for the kids that if they are struggling, that they can come to me as a coach. Hopefully they can talk to their friends, or hopefully their teammates can look out for their friends on the team. But it's, for me, I want to create a culture in the dressing room where, yeah, I want to win, but we also got to take care of these kids and help them manage stressors in their lives. So there's definitely room for mental health in the dressing room.
And you may have already touched on it, but from your perspective, what do you think is the most important thing for that mental health conversation in the sport or hockey space?
Yeah, I think it's the adults being positive role models, as we always should be, and just creating that welcoming space in the dressing room to talk about mental health. I've told the kids about times when I feel anxious or when I feel depressed, and it's amazing what the kids will say. Like they'll come up to me after and they'll say, "Oh, you know what? There's sometimes I feel the same way," or kids before big games will say, "I'm feeling really nervous and anxious," and those are all little opportunities to talk about, well, mental health is important. Being anxious or nervous, that's all part of life. And, how do we find ways to cope with those things? So I think it's really about creating a good space so that if they feel like they want to talk about something that they can. Um, and, I got the kids at least for another 1 to 2 years. So hopefully they'll talk more openly as they get older, because I know kids nowadays, mental health is a lot more, it's less of a taboo subject than it has been ever before.
And you raise an important point there in that there's little opportunities to discuss the topic, because I do think that it's often viewed that it needs to be a very big spotlighted conversation, but oftentimes those discussions pop up and we might not even realize it. Our teammates might not even realize it. So do you have any advice or maybe suggestions to, if you're a teammate or a coach, when you might see those little questions come up, or those little not flags, but just things that might come up where you can bring that mental health conversation into the conversation?
That's a great question. I think there's a couple of things, but I think at the root of it all is, get to know the kids. I know in this day and age, there's, I'm a volunteer coach, but I know there's, a lot of paid coaches in the G. But I would encourage any coach to really get to know the kids. The first thing I ask them is, how was school today? How was your day going? Are you doing anything exciting? Just really get to know them, because then once you get to know them, when you have interactions with them and something's off, you'll be able to tell. And that's often something that, if something is off, then it's a good time to just maybe pull them aside, check in on them, see how they're doing. If they're really young, go talk to their parents, see if everything's okay. But I think those might be little things that we miss, right? If we're coming to the game, we got warm up, we're prepping, what's our game plan, what's our pep talk. Sometimes we just forget that, they're kids and they're here for the enjoyment. And sometimes there's other things on their mind other than winning or losing the game.
And on that, we can even go back to your playing days. You've been around hockey and the mental health conversation for so long. Do you think that there's been progress made?
Oh, absolutely. I think just look recently, Carey Price coming back to the NHL after his time off. Professional athlete Simone Biles at the Olympics last year or last summer. I think within hockey and sports generally, it's really become an okay subject to talk about, which is great. And I think, when as I get older and as you get older, our kids and their kids, it's just going to be it's going to be the same as talking about a broken ankle or a sprained wrist. It will be just so commonplace that, I think it has changed, and for the better. As the kids get older, it's going to change even more. So I'm really looking forward to when my son, hopefully he gets involved in hockey. When he gets older, has kids, hopefully he's coaching or involved in some way. Hopefully he doesn't have to deal with some of the issues we deal with today.
And to get there, what do you hope continues to happen or continues to be discussed in hockey or just sports in general to continue seeing that progress?
Oh, I think first and foremost, I think the role models coming out, speaking about how they're doing, is huge, because the kids look up to these athletes of all different kinds. So the more role models that we have out there talking about mental wellness is so influential. Other things I hope happen. I hope there's some educational component. I know as coaches, we have to take gender diversity. We have to take a respect in sport work, a respect in sport e-learning to get our coaches certification. I'd love it if there was some type of, simple mental health education for coaches, and nothing too heavy, but just little tips like I was giving earlier, or just little suggestions about how you can maintain your own mental health, but the mental health of the athletes that you're taking care of.
Absolutely. And on that note, there's so much that adults can do in the game to help progress the discussion. What do you think there's little things that, you know, parents can do for their kids, or coaches from your perspective, to keep that a positive conversation?
Oh, like you said, I think keeping things positive. I think there's enough pressure on kids to make it for some reason. I don't know if it's the impact of social media or what have you, or if they just get older and see, you know, some of their friends run off, and not run off, but train hard and make it places. There's so much pressure as the kids get older to quote unquote make it. Um, I think just making it fun, making it a positive environment. I learned early in coaching that, you know, sometimes I can be too negative, and that's the feedback I get from some of my players during year-end exit interviews. I ask for feedback on what I can do better, and they say stay positive. And I think that's words that are good for coaches or parents to support the kids.
And that's such an important point that you just made, in that you ask your players for feedback. How significant is that in your role as a coach for them?
You know what? I'm doing it more this year because they're older. You know, when they're younger, it's a little easier to say, you know, I'm the coach, you do as I say. But as they get older, they all have questions about, well, why am I doing it this way, or they'll say, you know, this other system might work. And I've learned that, you know, the kids have a voice, and if you want to get buy-in, sometimes you got to hear their voice and give them that opportunity to express themselves. So it's you know, I have a little leadership group amongst my team, the kids the veterans who've been there a long time, and sometimes I just go and ask them, or I have a veterans only meeting, and I just say, what's going on in the dressing room, or what's the feedback you're hearing, what can we do. So I think as they get older, it's a good time to engage them that way.
Absolutely. And you're noting the importance of having a voice, and your voice puts a spotlight on so many important conversations. So we've talked about mental health, but May is also Asian Heritage Month. And it's so amazing to me, because you're standing on a bench and you're able to show kids, after growing up playing the game, that there is a space for kids who look like them. And do you ever step back and think, I'm making a difference that way as well?
You know what? Up until I started coaching, I didn't think so. But then, you know, when I started coaching, I started realizing, you know, how diverse the G is these days. Because back when I was playing, there weren't too many Asian kids playing. When I was playing, you know, some low-level junior hockey back in the day, I'd be, you know, there wouldn't be many Asian people in the rink, let alone on the ice. But to look at it now and seeing, you know, to be able to see how many Asian kids are out there playing hockey and doing really, really well. And similarly, a lot of Asian coaches I'm seeing on the bench. And it's just remarkable to me to see how that progression has gone from when I was a young kid playing hockey. You know, just like we want hockey to be a welcoming environment, and it's got to be open to everybody from every type of diverse culture, every socioeconomic background. So, you know, the more inclusive we make the game, the better it is for everyone.
Well, and you touched on your growing up playing and not having too many fellow Asian players around. Did you feel that with playing? Did you ever, was that something that you focused on, or was it something you focused on later?
I think it's a bit of both. Like, I didn't really, when you're on the ice, you're on the ice. You're just playing hockey, which is great. But there, you know, at the time, especially as I was older, there were kids, you know, who, out of ignorance or just not knowing, they would make comments, and sometimes that would fire you up and rile you up, especially when I was, you know, 17, 18, 19. But looking back on it, you know, it was just out of ignorance, and times have changed, and there's so much more awareness about diversity, and so much more awareness about different lifestyles or different cultures, that now looking back on it, I'm like, it's all part of, you know, all part of us growing as a society, and growing as a hockey society. So, you know, I do occasionally think back on it and think, you know, I have an interesting experience growing up playing hockey as an Asian kid. But then so do a lot of others. I remember my friend and I were talking about when Justine Blaney became the first female hockey player in the MTHL. That was huge. And we played against her. And I remember she got a lot of grief. Other players would just go after her. And, she took it and she played at a high level. And so I think everyone has their own experiences, no matter what, where you come from, what your background is. But, that's for me as an Asian kid, that was my experience.
And with that experience, is there something that you hope, even if it's a fellow Asian individual who wants to become a coach, or even kids that want to get into the game, is there something that you hope that they take from seeing others like yourself in the game?
Oh yeah, I think I just hope that they see there's like you said earlier, there's space in the game for someone like them, right? That they shouldn't be turned off because they don't think it's an environment for Asian kids, because the joy of hockey is you're playing a sport that you love, and they'll fall in love with the sport, and then everything else won't really matter. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. So hopefully they'll see that there is room in the game for them, and that it encourages them to play, pick up a stick, get on the skates and try it out.
And just in general, in keeping things welcoming, is there something that you hope all the adults in the game, whether you're a volunteer, or an official, or a coach, take with them as they participate in the game to welcome the game up to whoever it may be, but like you said, whether it's females or any culture or background that a kid might have?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I think it's always hard. There's other competing sports these days. Basketball, baseball, soccer's huge. Uh, for me, I think just making it open and accessible, and gosh, like not cost prohibitive. Hockey can be an expensive game, and how do we find ways to open it up for those people who may not have the resources to put their kid in hockey? Because I think hockey is just such a wonderful team sport, teaches you so many things, and we want to expose it to as many people as we can.
I couldn't agree with you more. And Joe, we're so lucky to have you on the bench in our league and as a hockey parent in our league as well. We're excited. The season's just wrapping up, but we're excited all ready to get back on the ice next year. I'm sure you're back on the bench again, ready to go, get some wins and get things going. We're very happy to have you on. You bring such an important spotlight to the mental health conversation, and you're such an important person to celebrate throughout May as Asian Heritage Month continues. So we really appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks, Stephanie. My pleasure.
That wraps up this episode of the GTHL Breakout podcast. We look forward to many more off-ice stories just like Joe.